Hello, my name is Kyle Artist, and I'd like to welcome you back to my channel entitled Family. Let's talk about money. Now, as always, I always like to let you know that this station is brought to you by my insurance company, AIC, which stands for Artist Insurance Consultants, and the telephone number is 1-888-532-1153. Once again, that's 1-888-532-1153. And as always, quotes on life insurance, or if you just have questions, please give me a call. It's not going to cost you a dime to get a quote or ask a question. Well, kind of excited about this week's topic. We're going to be discussing the civil rights movement and integration. Was that a good thing for the black community? So it's going to be interesting because often you get two very extreme points of view when it comes to this. Some are 100% for it and others were 100% against it. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to learn a few things about that time period and the effect that it had on the black community. So at first, we're going to discuss a few of the positives that happened during integration. And probably the best thing was it allowed those in the black community to get jobs. And when I say jobs, I'm talking about good jobs, jobs with benefits. Before that time, the only type of jobs that those in the black community were able to get were jobs like chauffeurs, maids, doormen, elevator operators. See, jobs that did not pay very well at all. And they had to raise their families on those incomes. But now they were able to get jobs with the city, state jobs, federal government jobs like working for the post office. Then the factory jobs. At that time, the car industry was booming. And now those in the black community was able to get those jobs in Chrysler and Ford and GM. And these were really good jobs. And from the money that those in the black community were able to make working these jobs, well, now they were able to purchase homes. They had a better standard of living. They were able to go on vacations. They could send their kids to college. See, these are all very positive things that happened through integration. Now, myself, I moved to Atlanta in the mid 1980s. And that was pretty interesting. It doesn't seem like a big deal now, but you got to realize back then in the early 80s, things had changed enough in a southern city like Atlanta that I was coming from Ohio, moving to Atlanta, looking for opportunities. So that was a big change because in the 60s and 70s, everybody was leaving the South, coming to the North looking for opportunities. But after the civil rights movement, integration took place, and now things were much better in a city like Atlanta, to where this 19-year-old kid loaded up his car and moved to Atlanta looking for opportunities. So just that showed how much things have changed and the benefits of the integration that came from the civil rights movement. But it's interesting that once I got to Atlanta, I remember when I went and got my first haircut in Atlanta. Yeah, back then we had hair. So went to Murray's Barbershop, and I remember hearing a much different view that day. I remember there's waiting to get in a chair and get my hair cut, and I heard the barber say that integration was the worst thing that ever happened to the black community. And I can remember sitting there thinking, that's gotta be the stupidest comment I've ever heard. But then he went on to explain himself. He said, this community right here, right out here on McDaniel Street, he said there used to be a grocery store right there on that corner across the street. He said beside that was a doctor's office. He said on the other side of the street was a restaurant. He said we had booming communities. He said the black community, we had our own stores, we had our own doctors, we had our own dentists, we had our lawyers. We took care of ourselves in our community. And he said, but the minute integration hit, everybody ran to go to the stores and things in the white communities. And eventually, all the businesses went under in the blacks communities because of that. So at that time, after he explained it, I was like, well, I could see his point. It did make sense to me. And now looking back, because that was almost 40 years ago when I was sitting in that barbershop and I was hearing this discussion. And I look back over all those years, I can say that I not only appreciate what he said, but now I'm like, wow, he was pretty dead on with what he was saying. And it's because after integration, it was very devastating to the black community. And it's because of an attitude that many of those in the community had at that time. And I'll describe it as they felt that white ice was colder. Now, all the old heads out there, you understand what I'm talking about when I make that statement. But what it's really doing is showing an attitude that happened when we integrated and was allowed to go into the white community and go into their stores and into their restaurants and things like that. We just felt that anything in that community was better than what we had in our community. And they couldn't wait to get over there and take their money over there. And to illustrate this thought, using that the white ice is colder, it's as if you had two gas stations on two different sides of the street. One was a black gas station in the black community. The other side of the street was a white gas station in the white community. And ice is ice. So it wouldn't matter where you buy your ice, as long as the freezer's working, the ice is gonna be cold. But it was a mindset that many in the black community had. They're gonna go across the street and get that ice from the white man because that white ice got to be colder. And that was an attitude that devastated the black community. Because a lot of times when this happened, we didn't look at the long range problems that were going to come from having this kind of attitude. Let me give you an example with baseball. And we're going to talk about Jackie Robinson. And let me say up front, I am not knocking Jackie Robinson. Huge fan. Appreciated him as a player. Respect him for how he handled himself with all the racism and hate that he had to deal with. And then after baseball, the rest of his life in the civil rights movement. So nothing I'm saying here is bad talking Jackie Robinson. Love him. But what I want to show is when Jackie Robinson crossed that color barrier and was able to go into the major leagues and open the door for those behind him to come, you know, we applauded it, we were happy about it, but what we didn't think was, hey, that actually destroyed an entire baseball league. See, there was a Negro league that destroyed the entire league. Now it was an 8-team league. Now you might be thinking, well, it wasn't that big, it was only 8 teams. Well, actually at that time period, the major leagues only had 16 teams. So it was a significant league. And when that league was destroyed, think about it. You had owners, you had managers, you had players, you had concessions, you had the announcers, you had the people that cleaned up the place. All these people were put out of work for every team. So think about that. How many people lost jobs when this league shut down because we wanted to play in the majors? Nothing wrong with wanting to play in the majors, but we didn't think about what that would do to our community. What about schools? We fought hard. We want to integrate the schools. Our kids deserve a good education. What happened? They integrate the schools. So you went from 2 schools to 1 school. Now, what about the teachers, the principals, and all that were at the schools in our community? When our children went to the schools in the white community, the teachers and principals did not follow. They already had teachers and principals. So now we look and we see that, oh, all the teachers and principals are now out of work and unable to get jobs in their field because there's no school system in the community. And they're not hiring them in the other communities. So we see how these things were devastating to the Black community. And also when you think about the education, we had to fight hard to be allowed to educate our children. And now we're sending them back to the people that didn't want to have an education to start with. It's things that were not thought about at that time. And we can see now looking back where errors were definitely made. Also, during this time, during the Civil Rights Movement, we had leaders, strong leaders, that were assassinated. And I'm talking about people like Medgar Evers, Stokely Carmichael, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X. They were strong leaders and were trying to move the Black community in the right direction. Even though they had different ways of looking at it and didn't always agree, bottom line is nobody would question that these leaders had the community at heart. And with them gone, now all of a sudden we start looking at our Black politicians as leaders. And that really wasn't a good thing to do. Because leaders, these leaders that we talked about, you know, they were willing to die for the cause. They were willing to die for their people. And they actually did. Politicians, they're cut from a different cloth. You know, once you get up here to Washington or in any state or government politics, politics is all about you gotta fit in to get in. And, you know, you wash my back, I wash yours. So it's a whole different attitude. And so we shouldn't really look at them as leaders. They're not going to bring up our community. I think a fine example of that is if we look at the highest political office. We had a Black president for 8 years. And during that time, well, when we look at the wealth gap, it didn't close any. In fact, it widened. Opportunities in the Black community, nothing got better. And so I'm just saying that to show that leadership for our community to come up is not going to come through politics. Now, I'm not one of those that are bashing Barack Obama. Actually, I'm a fan of Barack Obama. When he became president, the age that my children were, over those 8 years, they went from grade school to adulthood, seeing a Black man as the president of the United States. And he handled that job with dignity and class. And actually, I feel that he was a good president. So for those that holler, well, he didn't do anything for Black people. Actually, that wasn't his job. His job was to lead the country. And that's the whole country. And I personally felt he did a good job of that. So when he made statements like, a rising tide lifts all boats, some people were angry about that. But that's really the job that he was there to do. So when I made that statement, I was just stating facts. I am not one of the Obama haters that, holler out, we didn't do nothing for black people for 8 years. Well, for all those that say that, I want to ask you a question. What did you do for yourself over those 8 years? Did you start a business? Did you open a stock portfolio? Did you invest and buy some real estate? Or did you just sit around for 8 years waiting for somebody else to do for you? You see, that's the problem. We have to learn to do for self. Now, politicians, they have their place. They have their jobs to do. And I support them in their jobs. As an example, right now, a hot button issue is voter suppression. Yes, I want our black politicians in there fighting that fight. And we should support them in that fight. But we don't want to look at them as leaders that is going to bring up our community for us. We got to learn to do that for self. We need businesses in our community. See, when we talked about all the businesses, when we ran to go out to the white community to support all their businesses, and we still do this. See, we have to build businesses in our community. I have some rental properties in real estate. So that means that I need a HVAC, plumber, electrician, lawn care service, and general handyman on speed dial when something happens. I have, in the area that I'm in, I have not been able to fill one of those positions with somebody from our community. And I've tried. My property manager has tried. And yet we have been unable to fill any of those positions with somebody from our community. Yes, this is the type of things we need to adjust. We need black business in our community. And in future videos, we'll discuss that in more detail. So now, I want to take just a few minutes and talk about insurance. You know, with me, it always gonna come back around to insurance. But this is an area that we in our community just don't understand the importance of it and the benefits of it. So I'm gonna take a few minutes and try to explain a few things. In our community, if you go to a gas station at a certain time of day, you have trouble getting in the door because so many people are in there playing their numbers, playing that lottery, in hopes of winning big. Nothing wrong with dreaming big. They say you got to be in it to win it, and people do win it. So, but here's the thing. Your chances of winning the lottery with any significant money is, the numbers are insurmountable. They say you got a better chance of getting struck by lightning. But yet, they spend that money every day. Now with insurance, life insurance, this money is guaranteed. If you pay your premiums and you keep your life insurance active, when you leave here, your beneficiaries are going to be guaranteed that money. Now, when we say that, we could be talking about $50,000. We could be talking about $100,000. We could be talking about $500,000. We could be talking about $1 million, depending on the policy that you take out and how early you do it. Insurance is not expensive if you take it out when you're young and healthy. So often, the people that call me, I want to get insurance. Well, now they're in their 50s, they're overweight, they got high blood pressure, diabetes. Now, life insurance is expensive. So if we take care of it when we're young and healthy, it's inexpensive, and then the payout is pretty incredible. Other communities, I always say that if I see other communities that are doing things the right way, well, then I'm going to talk them up and, encourage us to learn from those communities. I have a colleague in the insurance business. She helped me out on something. So as a way to say thank you, I took her to lunch. And we were sitting there having lunch, having a discussion, talking about family, talking about insurance and things. But she told me that a couple years ago that she had 2 tragedies in her family in the same summer. She lost 2 cousins. One she lost to an unexpected heart attack, and the other was in a car accident and was killed. So it was a very difficult summer for her. She lost 2, it was like first cousins, ones that she grew up with and was close to. So it was devastating. But once the families, they had to deal with the loss, so emotionally it was bad, but they had prepared. One, she told me, the family received a check for $400,000. And then the other one, that family received a check for $600,000. And it's interesting that she told me the one that received the check for the $600,000, well, she took out, a few $1,000s to take care of all the burial needs and everything. And then the bulk of the money, since she wasn't really, needing money, they weren't in, a bad condition at all. She rolled that money over into her stock portfolio. And this just happened to be the time when the stock market was going crazy. And in like less than 2 years, that 600,000 turned into $1 million. And they didn't spend no more money on those policies than those in our community were spending going on lottery tickets. So I don't understand why we don't focus on life insurance. I hope it's not because you're not going to get the money. Because, we want to take care of our families. So if we leave here, we can give our families something financially that we could never give them when we were living. But in our death, we put them in a much better position financially. So if it's our wife or children, or it could be siblings. I don't know if your situation, you could be a single person. And hey, you may want to pay college for, your nieces and nephews, or help them with their first home. There's things that, you can do that's going to benefit your family. And when you benefit your family, see, that benefits the community. If every family, when somebody passed in the community, if they received a check for $200,000, that's life-changing money. And usually I find when it comes to money that you get from a loss, they view that far more serious. They lost a loved one, and their loved one bequeathed them with this money. Oftentimes, they don't play with that money. They use that for things that will benefit and grow wealth. And so that's what we want to do. Another point I want you to realize is when you think about, let's use the lottery and let's use life insurance. Let's say you won $400,000 in the lottery. And let's say I was a beneficiary that received $400,000 from life insurance. Well, your $400,000, government's going to tax that and capital gains tax around 40%. So they're going to take 40% off the top. So 40% of 400,000 would be 160,000. So now your $400,000 is now $240,000. When it comes to life insurance, the beneficiary or the death benefit of life insurance is tax-free. So I would receive a check for $400,000. We both got $400,000, but I got to keep $400,000. You only got to keep $240,000 out of yours. So there are so many advantages to life insurance. And I'm not sure if I mentioned that my friend, she was from an Indian background. So I just want to say, because I talked about other communities, but I don't know if I mentioned her community. But she was from an Indian background. So with them, insurance is a vital part of their financial planning. And it needs to be the same with us. So please, if you have questions, if you want a life insurance policy, give me a call. Let's talk about it. You know, this is just something that we need to do. It protects your family. It builds your community. These are the things we want to do. So once again, I'm going to give you that number. It's 1-888-532-1153. And that's Artis Insurance Consultants, or you can just say AIC. And once again, 1-888-532-1153. So please give me a call with your questions. Well, that's going to bring us to an end today. I thought today's discussion was interesting. And it really shows areas that we need to work on as a community. And like I said, we're going to discuss that further in other discussions. So, hey, appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you again next week. You have a wonderful weekend. Bye.